Straight to Hell is a biography where the biggest magic trick is not astrology, but making exploitation look like destiny. It follows a woman so gifted at reading weakness that she turns survival into an empire, then mistakes control for salvation. In 2026, Kazuko Hosoki is one of the most famous fortune tellers in Japan. People wait endlessly for the chance to consult her. Her 6-star divination books have sold tens of millions of copies since the early 1980s, and her television appearances pull enormous ratings. One sentence from her can terrify a celebrity, ruin a reputation, or send an entire studio into chaos. Writer Minori Uozumi is introduced to Kazuko through her editor. The plan is for Minori to turn Kazuko's extraordinary life into an autobiographical novel. Kazuko has already read Minori's work, so she claims to be excited about the collaboration. Before they can begin, Minori watches Kazuko record a variety show. A female comedian sits across from her, expecting a playful reading. Instead, Kazuko tears into the woman's personality and future. When the comedian protests, Kazuko doubles down and warns that if she continues living the same way, she may eventually take her own life. The exchange becomes so vicious that the comedian walks out before filming is finished. Kazuko still shouts after her, refusing to soften a single word. After the show, Minori and her editor ride with Kazuko in her luxury car. The editor admits that the confrontation frightened him and asks whether the comedian will really meet the fate Kazuko predicted. Kazuko's answer makes one thing clear: a prediction does not need to be proven immediately to have power. Once fear enters a person's mind, it begins doing the work for her. Kazuko invites them to dinner so Minori can hear her story firsthand. Minori finally asks where that story truly begins. Kazuko lights a cigarette, pauses, and takes them back 60 years. In 1946, defeated Japan is still covered in ruins. Tokyo is crowded with displaced families, hunger, and desperation. As a child, Kazuko lives beneath a bridge with her mother, Mine, and her younger siblings. Their few belongings sit on a handcart, and dignity has become a luxury. Every day is about finding enough food to survive the next one. Mine tries to earn money supplying drinks to a small establishment, but its owner humiliates her after discovering that the supposed beer is really weak tea. Kazuko watches the entire exchange. After her mother leaves, the girl returns and tells the owner that the bottles came from her father, a man supposedly connected to the occupation forces. Afraid of offending a military family, the owner pays. Then he tastes the drink, realizes he has been fooled, and chases Kazuko and her brother through the street. Her brother falls. The owner catches Kazuko and knocks the small girl to the ground, but even while losing the fight, she stares back with such cold fury that the grown man hesitates. Kazuko has already learned that when strength fails, nerve can still make another person retreat. That night, the family is too hungry to sleep. Kazuko searches the kitchen and finds nothing. Outside, she spots a bun left as an offering before a small shrine. She steals it, runs home, and divides it among her siblings while pretending she is not hungry. Then she returns to apologize to the deity. On the ground, she sees an earthworm. Starvation has stripped away disgust, so she swallows it. The memory becomes Kazuko's private definition of hell, not flames or demons, but a child forced to eat whatever the earth gives her. By 1955, Tokyo is rebuilding and the Hosoki family runs a small Odin shop. Mine and the other daughters serve customers while teenage Kazuko entertains them. She bets that she can cry within 30 seconds, produces tears on command, and collects 100 yen from every amused customer. Mine thinks the stunt is improper, but the customers pay willingly. Some even say Kazuko should become an actress. Kazuko has considered it. A talent audition poster catches her eye, but beside it is another advertisement promising high pay to women working at a cabaret. Poverty makes the practical choice for her. She applies at the White Glove Club, lies about her age, and meets manager Hajime Ochiai. He immediately recognizes that she is still a high school student, yet hires her anyway. Kazuko states one condition: she will entertain customers, but she will not sell her body. Ochiai assures her that White Glove is not that kind of place. At that moment, the club's top hostess, Lily, appears. Kazuko confidently says she knows how to handle men, and Lily instantly recognizes a threat. On Kazuko's first night, Ochiai gives her a glamorous makeover. The girl in the mirror looks older, polished, and almost unrecognizable. She is assigned to learn from Lily, but when a wealthy customer asks Kazuko's age, she claims to be 20 and invents a respectable office job. Lily quickly pulls the man away before the younger woman can capture his attention. Kazuko refuses to accept defeat. She asks a waiter about the customer and learns that he is the president of a textile company, a self-made man who also suffered during the war. That information is all she needs. At home, Kazuko tells Mine about the cabaret job. She promises to keep studying, bring her wages home, and avoid causing trouble, though she will no longer be able to help at the family shop. Then she calls the textile president and asks to meet him alone. Kazuko says she does not want anything from him. She simply needs someone who can understand her story. She describes the hunger of the war years and the constant fear that her family might die. Because the president climbed out of similar poverty, he immediately feels connected to her. When he offers encouragement, Kazuko begins to cry. The tears look spontaneous, but they are the same tears she once produced for 100 yen at the Odin shop. The performance works. The president becomes protective of her, and Kazuko steals one of Lily's most valuable customers. She repeats the method with other successful men, learning their histories, identifying what they want to hear, and reflecting their own struggles back at them. Before long, the teenage newcomer is one of White Glove's most popular hostesses. Lily retaliates by throwing trash into Kazuko's locker and mocking her in the dressing room. When Kazuko complains to Oshii, he comforts her, holds her hand, and promises to protect her. He buys her an expensive dress and takes her through Ginza, showing her the glamorous district he dreams of conquering. One day, he says, he will open his own club, and he wants Kazuko beside him. The promise sounds like love. Oshii kisses her and takes her home. Kazuko gives herself to him, believing they now share a future. She imagines saving money, opening a business together, and never being powerless again. Then the textile president makes an indecent demand. Kazuko pushes him away and learns that Oshii has effectively traded access to her in exchange for money. She storms toward Oshii, but he insists that the arrangement is necessary for their shared dream. Lily then reveals that the romance, the dress, and the promises were all part of Oshii's routine. Kazuko was never his partner. She was inventory. Humiliated and furious, Kazuko returns carrying gasoline. She pours it over Oshii, strikes a match, and watches him collapse in terror. At the last moment, she lets the flame die. Seeing him beg is enough to prove that he no longer owns her. Back at her family's Odin shop, Kazuko drinks until she can barely stand. The betrayal still breaks something inside her, and she attempts to end her life. She survives, but the girl who wakes up has a new conviction. She will leave school, become an owner, and never again let another person decide her price. Iichi Nakazono, an investor who often drinks at Mine's shop, sees her potential. He shows Kazuko a busy storefront, but the annual rent is far beyond anything she can afford. Nakazono offers to finance her because he believes she can turn the location into a success. Kazuko drops out of high school the next day. Her first restaurant is small, but she understands its office worker customers perfectly. Every serving is sized and heated, so rushed employees can eat quickly. The menu changes just enough to keep regulars interested. With low margins and high volume, the business becomes profitable. 6 months later, someone offers 3 times the original price for the lease, forcing the little shop to close. Kazuko is angry, but she treats the setback as capital for her next move. She opens a nightclub in Shimbashi, away from the most expensive entertainment district. Instead of hiring experienced hostesses, she recruits ordinary young women whose freshness makes overworked salarymen feel relaxed rather than managed. The formula succeeds. Kazuko repays Nakazono within a year, and within 5 years she has saved more than 3 million yen at a time when an ordinary monthly salary is under 20,000. She is barely 20. Money alone is no longer enough. Kazuko begins sitting in on university lectures despite lacking a high school diploma. At first, she understands very little. She studies harder than the enrolled students and discovers that knowledge gives her a pleasure no luxury can match. But her ambition soon outgrows Shimbashi. In 1962, at 23, she decides to compete in Ginza, the largest stage in Tokyo nightlife. She predicts that the 1964 Olympics will flood the city with visitors and wants to be established before the boom arrives. The gamble requires all her savings plus another 5 million yen from Nakazono. Even he hesitates at the scale of the risk. Kazuko kneels in the street and refuses to rise until he agrees to trust her again. Mine is terrified and consults a fortune teller. Kazuko laughs at the warning and calls divination nonsense, Though privately she knows the new club could destroy her, she pushes forward anyway. The larger Ginza venue opens, her brother Hisao joins the operation, and Kazuko uses everything she learned from business and university to attract politicians and corporate leaders. Japan's economy is accelerating, and within a year she repays Nakazono once more. During a gathering for powerful guests, Kazuko meets Morohiko Mita, the quiet son of a wealthy landowning family. Mita falls for her immediately. He returns with flowers 3 times a week and repeatedly asks her out. Kazuko politely refuses until a politician reveals the scale of his family's wealth. Mita's father is an influential supporter who even sold mountains for major public development. That night, Kazuko finally accepts a date. Mita asks whether his family name changed her mind. She denies it and says she simply does not want to reject his sincerity forever. Then he tells her about his dream. Rather than remain a traditional landowner, he wants to build a seaside resort inspired by Las Vegas, combining hotels and gambling. To Kazuko, the dream sounds like a door into a world even larger than Ginza. One rainy night, Mita arrives at the club without an umbrella. His father has died, forcing him to return home, inherit the estate, and abandon his job in Tokyo. He says he may never see Kazuko again. When she follows him outside with an umbrella, Mita finally confesses how deeply he loves her and asks her to come with him. Kazuko wants to keep climbing, and marriage to a wealthy heir appears to offer both love and opportunity. She accepts. But she soon discovers that marrying Mita does not mean becoming his partner. On their wedding night, Kazuko offers to help with the family business. She expects to use her political and commercial contacts to support the resort project. Mita tells her that he will visit banks and government offices the next morning and agrees that she can accompany him. Yet when Kazuko wakes up, he has already left without her. At breakfast, Mita's mother, Kyo, explains the rule Kazuko failed to understand. Business belongs to the men. A daughter-in-law has only one important duty: producing heirs. When Mita returns, Kazuko tries again. She reminds him that she ran a successful Ginza club and knows influential people. Mita still refuses. As an only child, he has always longed for siblings, so he wants Kazuko to give him a large family. The man who promised to build a future with her now expects her to stay home and bear children. Kazuko searches for any useful role in the household. Kyo responds by ordering her to clean the chicken coop, the dirtiest task available. Kazuko does the work without complaint, but she cannot even telephone Hisao without sensing her mother-in-law's disapproval. In a mansion full of servants, she has less freedom than she had while living beneath a bridge. When Mita's great-uncle dies, Kyo refuses to let Kazuko attend the funeral. In the kitchen, Kazuko overhears the servants discussing why. The family considers her a woman from the nightlife trade, not a respectable wife. Mita only received permission to marry her because he begged his mother, and the household sees Kazuko as little more than a body meant to continue the bloodline. Kazuko has endured the marriage for 1 week. That is enough. She fires every servant, kills the chickens Kyo made her clean up after, and turns them into an elaborate final meal. Then she boards a train back to Tokyo, leaving Mita and his mother to enter a dark, empty mansion and discover what remains of their precious breeding stock. Kazuko does not waste time mourning the marriage. She focuses on opening more clubs before the Olympics. Mine still fears that her daughter is moving too quickly and returns to the fortune teller, but Kazuko dismisses both women as too cautious. She may have misjudged Mita, yet her original nightclub remains profitable, and that is enough to start again. The fortune teller predicts that Kazuko's business will continue to grow, but repeats a warning about the men around her. Kazuko ignores it. As Ginza becomes busier, politicians, executives, and members of the criminal underworld all begin entering her orbit. One day, a Yakuza lieutenant arrives and demands a monthly protection payment 10 times the usual amount. Kazuko threatens to call the police. His men smash glasses and remind her that police operate in public while the Yakuza can wait in the shadows. Before the confrontation escalates, gang boss Sojiro Takaguchi enters, berates his own men, and announces that he is a regular customer. He appears to protect Kazuko, and the two become acquainted. Soon, Kazuko has 3 clubs and spends each night moving between them. On the way from one venue to another, she notices a handsome man. He later appears as a customer, spends lavishly, and never requests Kazuko's company. His name is Yutaka Sudo, president of a real estate firm. The more he ignores her, the more interested she becomes. Near New Year's, Sudo suddenly asks Kazuko for a loan of 500,000 yen. Hisao warns that Sudo has spent only 300,000 at their clubs, which means he could walk away with a 200,000 yen profit. It looks like an obvious confidence trick. Kazuko lends him the money anyway, calling their meeting fate. As Sudo leaves, Kazuko admits that she has always wanted to speak with him and wondered why he avoided her. Sudo tells Kazuko that he was actually coming to the club because he wanted to see her. The confession may be calculated, but beneath the falling snow, Kazuko chooses to believe it. Even if she is being deceived, she thinks she might accept the price for one honest chance at love. Sudo returns the full loan, adds 50,000 yen in gratitude, and immediately appears more trustworthy. When Kazuko mentions that she wants a larger home, he offers to show her a property owned by an American diplomat preparing to leave Japan. At the viewing, Sudo speaks fluent English and handles the negotiation with ease. Kazuko is impressed by both the house and the man presenting it. When she visits Sudo's office to complete the purchase, she overhears him shouting. Instead of hiding the truth, Sudo admits that much of his real estate business is illegal. His company pressures owners, manipulates deals, and sometimes seizes land through threats. He assumes Kazuko will no longer trust him and offers to introduce her to a legitimate broker. His confession has the opposite effect. Kazuko values a man who reveals an ugly truth more than one who performs respectable lies. Sudo explains that he grew up an orphan after the war and entered criminal business to survive. Kazuko recognizes her own hunger in his story. They both came from devastation, both refused to remain poor, and both learned to treat ordinary rules as obstacles. She buys the house through him and asks him to the seaside. There, they talk about childhood deprivation and the dreams it produced. Sudo remembers lying awake because his stomach was empty. He imagined owning a nightclub where he could sit comfortably and watch beautiful women dance. Kazuko confesses that she once wanted to be an actress, wearing elegant dresses and dancing with handsome leading men. Sudo offers his hand, and the two dance beside the water. Then he asks Kazuko to wait for him while he ends his illegal operations. He promises that once he is clean, they can build a life together. To Kazuko, it is the warmest promise any man has ever made. The year 1964 becomes one of the happiest periods of her life. Her businesses thrive during the Tokyo Olympics. She moves into the new house. Her relationship with Sudo grows more intimate. For once, career and romance seem to be rising together. Then Sudo takes her to an empty building and announces that it will become the nightclub he has dreamed of since childhood. He admits that hospitality is not his strength, while Kazuko understands customers better than anyone. He wants them to run the club together. The project will cost 200 million yen. Sudo claims he has already raised half and will find the rest after leaving his old business. Kazuko immediately offers to provide the missing 100 million by mortgaging her house and all three clubs. Love has finally reached the one place where she is usually most disciplined, her judgment. Sudo sets one condition. Their new club represents their private dream, so no outsiders can interfere. In particular, he does not want Nakazono involved. Kazuko once asked Nakazono to investigate Sudo, and the investor discovered disturbing information. But when Nakazono tried to warn her, Kazuko refused to listen and walked away before he could finish. Sudo understands that an objective observer might break the spell, so he isolates her from the one man who has consistently protected her interests. Kazuko hesitates, then mortgages everything and raises the 100 million yen. She handles the club's design, layout, and entertainment plan while Sudo controls construction and finances. The enormous venue opens on schedule, and both of them stand on stage to celebrate. Kazuko sees a shared triumph. Sudo looks at her like a man watching a trap close. The club draws crowds, but Nakazono remains worried. While drinking at Mine's Odin shop, he says he hopes Kazuko's latest venture will end safely. His concern reminds Mine of the fortune teller's warning. Already anxious about her daughter, she suffers a heart attack. At the same time, Kazuko returns to the new club and finds workers surrounding the entrance. Sudo paid them with worthless checks, and they have come to collect. He has disappeared. Hisao examines the accounts and discovers that Sudo emptied them before fleeing. Kazuko still tries to deny what has happened. She races to Sudo's office, but the company is gone. Among abandoned papers, she finds a file sent by a private investigator. Sudo had researched her entire life before approaching her. He knew her childhood, her marriage, her businesses, her loneliness, and the type of man she wanted to believe in. Every display of vulnerability was designed from information he had purchased. The loan, the repayment, the American house, the confession about his criminal past, the dance by the sea, and the promise to change were not separate moments of sincerity. They were steps in a long con. Sudo did not merely steal her assets. He built a man from her desires and allowed her to fall in love with him. Kazuko sells the house and loses her 3 original clubs while creditors close in. She hides inside the ruined venue and cries until Hisao arrives with worse news. Mine has died. At the hospital, Kazuko realizes that while fighting debt collectors, she missed her mother's final moments. Her sisters explain that Mine's heart attack followed another visit to the fortune teller. They also warn Kazuko to stay away from the funeral because creditors might follow her and destroy the service. As she leaves the hospital, Kazuko sees Nakazono. She tries to speak, but he passes without acknowledging her. He warned her, and she rejected the truth because the lie felt better. At the lowest point of her life, Takaguchi appears. He offers to settle every debt and make the collectors disappear. His price is not money. He wants Kazuko herself. She has nowhere else to turn, so she accepts. Only later does the full design become clear. Takaguchi orchestrated the disaster from the beginning. Sudo was one of his pieces, selected to study Kazuko, seduce her, and strip away every asset until she would crawl toward the only man offering rescue. Sudo drives into the night with his work complete. Kazuko remains behind, trapped in the hell Takaguchi built specifically for her. Back in the present, Kazuko tells audiences that betrayal pushed her to the bottom, and astrology gave her the strength to climb out. At her lectures, she turns private suffering into proof of spiritual authority. Tickets are inexpensive, but the emotional momentum leads many followers into costly one-on-one consultations. An elderly woman arrives with bruises caused by her abusive son. Kazuko quickly reads the situation and tells the woman that trouble inside her family comes from neglected ancestors. The proposed cure is an expensive grave marker sold through one of Kazuko's associates. Minori watches from outside the room, remembering accusations that Kazuko receives commissions from cemetery businesses. She cannot yet prove the arrangement, but she sees staff counting mountains of cash after the event. Kazuko notices Minori's discomfort and asks what gives money value. Before the writer can answer, Kazuko takes every bill from Minori's wallet and burns them one by one. The flames cost only 20,000 yen, yet Minori's panic is immediate. Kazuko explains that money matters because it carries human desire. That night, she demonstrates the lesson at a host club. She orders a champagne tower and spends freely while young men crowd around her. A relatively small payment buys attention, affection, and the temporary illusion of control. Kazuko uses money to reverse the humiliations of her youth. Men once assigned her a price, now she decides theirs. But the years under Takaguchi were not a philosophical exercise. He used drugs, assaulted Kazuko inside her own club, and treated her like property. His subordinates followed his example, ordering her around as if the woman who once controlled 3 businesses had no authority at all. During this period, Kazuko meets Masaya Hada, another Yakuza leader. Hada is not frightened by Takaguchi. He invites Kazuko to dance, and when she warns that she belongs to Takaguchi, he challenges the idea that any person can own her. Takaguchi appears and expects Hada to retreat. Instead, Hada openly expresses interest in Kazuko and invites his rival to gamble. Takaguchi accepts because he wants to humiliate Hada. He loses every round, burns through his savings, and borrows at crushing interest. To settle the debt, he surrenders everything, including the lease to Kazuko's club. Hada immediately returns that lease to her. He asks for no payment and leaves before she can turn gratitude into obligation. The gesture overwhelms Kazuko. Sudo pretended to be restrained, dangerous, and secretly honorable because those qualities attracted her. Hada actually embodies them. Kazuko pushes into his office and declares her feelings. Hada tries to resist, but her intensity eventually breaks through, and they begin a passionate relationship. In 1973, the oil crisis ends Japan's period of effortless growth. Kazuko's nightclub loses customers, and Hada's gambling operation also struggles. He can barely support his men. Kazuko offers to sell her club and give him the money, but Hada refuses. He wants to keep her away from the criminal world that has already hurt her. One desperate subordinate secretly takes money from Kazuko and buys narcotics to sell on Hada's territory. Drugs are a line Hada will not tolerate. After discovering what happened, he decides that his connection to Kazuko gives his men another way to exploit her. He ends the relationship, believing distance is the only protection he can offer. Heartbroken, Kazuko does something she once considered foolish. She asks a fortune teller to examine her compatibility with Hada. The reading says their charts match perfectly. Their separation came during a period of bad luck, but the cycle is about to turn. The fortune teller also suggests that Kazuko change direction professionally. Outside, Kazuko notices the crowds entering a modern disco. She converts her old nightclub into a dance venue, and the updated format brings customers back. Money begins flowing again. Hada also returns, unable to stay away. Their reunion lasts only moments before Takaguchi arrives with a gun. Hada steps in front of Kazuko and takes 4 bullets. Against the odds, he survives. The shooting convinces Kazuko that whatever his criminal identity, Hada is the one man who is willing to die protecting her. Hada cannot legally offer the respectable marriage she once imagined, but they take wedding photographs anyway. In front of the camera, Kazuko smiles with a softness rarely seen before. She believes they will remain together for life. The next chapter begins with another famous woman. Chiyoko Shimakura is one of Japan's leading singers and a regular presence on the country's biggest year-end music program. In 1977, her romantic partner persuades her to guarantee a series of loans totaling roughly 400 million yen, then disappears. Creditors descend on Chiyoko, and the scandal threatens both her career and her life. Kazuko first gives Minori the heroic version. In that account, she finds Chiyoko about to jump from a bridge and personally saves her. Kazuko then brings Hada to confront the creditors. His Yakuza status gives Chiyoko enough breathing room to return to the stage. Before a performance, the terrified singer doubts she can face an audience, and Kazuko restores her confidence by telling her that survival itself will become the reason people listen. Afterward, Kazuko gathers every creditor. She has scraped together 150 million yen and proposes that they accept it as full settlement of the 400 million yen liability. The creditors refuse. The loans carry Chiyoko's guarantee, and they do not care that her partner took the money. Hada then bows before them. A gang leader lowering himself in public is both a plea and a warning. He asks them not to destroy a singer treasured across Japan. Faced with his influence, the creditors accept the reduced amount. Kazuko purchases the debt and becomes Chiyoko's new creditor. At a press conference, she announces the formation of an agency devoted entirely to rebuilding the singer's career. Chiyoko will perform until the debt is repaid. In front of the cameras, the singer weeps with gratitude. The rescue creates a bond that appears almost sisterly. Chiyoko's apartment still has to be sold, but the auction is 6 months away. Kazuko tells her to work as if her life depends on it and earn enough to buy the home back. Chiyoko obeys. They accept every engagement available, traveling from rural halls to prisons. Hisao handles practical work while Kazuko manages the schedule and negotiations. The pace is exhausting, but every time Kazuko watches Chiyoko sing, she believes they can endure another day. Chiyoko's endorsement also revitalizes Kazuko's disco, while the singer's popularity rises again. Larger offers arrive. Before the auction deadline, they manage to repurchase the apartment. According to Kazuko's version, once the debt is cleared, she selflessly releases Chiyoko because an outsider to the music industry cannot guide the star any further. Minori is captivated. She begins to see Kazuko as a fierce but generous woman who repeatedly rescues people after surviving her own disasters. Then Hisao calls. He lived through these events, and after hearing the version Kazuko told Minori, he laughs. He says it is all a lie. Hisao's account begins with the economic downturn. The disco provided a temporary recovery, but customers soon disappeared again. Kazuko and Hada fought constantly over money. Chiyoko did not enter their lives through a chance rescue on a bridge. A man with connections in both entertainment and organized crime approached Hada because the singer was already being hunted by creditors. The suicide scene, according to Hisao, was invented to make Kazuko appear heroic. When Kazuko first saw Chiyoko, she saw a valuable asset. She designed the public spectacle in which Hada bowed to the creditors because his reputation would force them to compromise. Hada disliked the performance, but he needed money and cooperated. Chiyoko was deeply moved by what appeared to be sacrifice and worked for Kazuko for years. The schedule drained her physically and emotionally. At home, Kazuko did not even prepare a warm meal for the exhausted singer. When Chiyoko asked how much debt remained, Kazuko used the same mechanism Takaguchi once used against her. The old debt might be gone, but new charges had mysteriously taken its place. The fresh total exceeded 100 million yen. Chiyoko could no longer see a path to freedom. An entertainment insider finally approached her while Kazuko was away. Chiyoko's fee was at least 4 million yen per appearance, and she had worked constantly for several years. The income should have repaid the original debt long ago. Chiyoko returns home after another exhausting day and finds Kazuko dressed in a luxurious new fur coat, preparing to go out. She confronts her. Once the financial deception is exposed, Kazuko stops pretending. The apartment has indeed been bought back, but it is registered in Kazuko's name. Chiyoko has signed a restrictive contract, has no savings, and technically has nowhere to live. Kazuko orders her into the basement at night while expecting her to keep performing during the day. Chiyoko collapses after Kazuko leaves. Hada arrives later to move her belongings on Kazuko's instructions. Unlike Kazuko, he cannot ignore the singer's condition. His sympathy gives Chiyoko an idea for revenge. When Kazuko returns, she finds Chiyoko and Hada together. This, Hisao says, is the real reason Kazuko and Hada separated. One version is a fairy tale about two damaged lovers. The other is a horror story about exploitation, resentment, and betrayal. Minori no longer knows which witness deserves belief, so she visits the elderly Chiyoko. Chiyoko refuses the comfort of a simple answer. Kazuko really did save her. Without Kazuko's intervention, the creditors might have destroyed her life and career. But Hisao is also telling the truth. Kazuko treated Chiyoko as a source of money and kept moving the financial finish line. Minori asks whether Kazuko deliberately deceived her. Chiyoko does not erase either side of the woman. Gratitude and exploitation existed together. Chiyoko slept with Hada partly to break Kazuko's control, and the affair ended the relationship between Kazuko and the man she loved. Without Hada's protection, Kazuko could no longer intimidate Chiyoko or force her to remain. She released the singer, and both women maintained a polite public story rather than expose each other. Behind that silence sat two incompatible truths. Kazuko had rescued Chiyoko, and then she had built another cage around her. With Chiyoko gone and her relationship with Hada broken, Kazuko loses both the center of her business and the man she loves. For once, she has time she cannot convert into work. She travels, trying to numb the pain. In a hotel lobby, Kazuko sees a young woman clinging to a man and assumes she is being abandoned. Later, at the bar, the same woman drinks alone. Kazuko recognizes the despair of rejection and offers blunt advice. But the situation is not what she imagined. The man is married to the woman's close friend. The young woman has been having an affair with him, but she is begging him not to divorce his wife. She was willing to betray her friend, yet she has no intention of taking responsibility for the husband once the marriage collapses. Kazuko's sympathy turns to disgust. She tells the woman that she is a source of disaster in her friend's life. The woman mistakes Kazuko's confidence for supernatural insight and asks whether she is a fortune teller. Kazuko follows the opportunity instead of correcting her. Using details the woman has already revealed, Kazuko constructs a frightening reading. She warns that the affair may drive the wife to take her own life or even retaliate violently. Then Kazuko presents separation as the only path toward a better future. Terrified, the woman leaves the hotel determined to end the relationship. She removes an expensive gemstone ring given to her by the married man and offers it to Kazuko in gratitude. Kazuko accepts it with delight. She meant only to frighten a selfish stranger, yet her performance changed the woman's decision, earned genuine thanks, and produced a valuable reward. Fortune-telling appears to offer everything she desires. It is profitable, requires little more than words and observation, and gives her direct control over another person's choices. She finds the fortune teller her mother once consulted and asks to borrow books on divination. The older woman warns that a practitioner should study for at least 10 years before advising others. A careless reading can redirect a life, so the work demands humility and restraint. Kazuko agrees politely, then immediately begins practicing on customers in her own club. Within a year, she uses publishing contacts to release a book on divination despite her shallow training. To dominate the field, however, she needs more than a book. She needs an authority whose name can certify her expertise. Kazuko targets Masataka Yasunaga, one of the country's most respected scholars of fortune-telling. She claims that studying his books transformed her understanding and inspired her own publication. Yasunaga immediately catches the contradiction. His relevant work has been available for only 4 years. If that represents the full length of her study, she has no business presenting herself as a master. Most people would retreat after such an exposure. Kazuko cries, apologizes, and begs him to teach her. Yasunaga casually agrees, expecting the encounter to end there. On her next visit, Kazuko brings his favorite liquor. Yasunaga is elderly, physically weak, and showing signs of dementia. His daughter, Tawako Kato, manages his care and forbids alcohol and cigarettes. Kazuko sees the tension between the disciplined daughter and the old man's appetites. When Tawako is absent, Kazuko reminds Yasunaga that she owns a bar and can offer the pleasures his household denies him. He begins visiting in secret. Kazuko has spent her life learning how to entertain powerful men, and Yasunaga is no exception. Soon he is infatuated, visits her home openly, and ignores Tawako's objections. Kazuko says she wants to admire his valuable calligraphy and paintings, so Yasunaga sends bundles of them to her house. Tawako finally storms into Kazuko's home to confront her. Yasunaga is too intoxicated to manage the conflict. The strain of drinking, smoking, and excitement overwhelms his failing body, and he collapses. Doctors save him, but he remains unconscious. Kazuko arrives at the hospital with reporters and displays a marriage registration bearing Yasunaga's signature. Tawako locks the door, which only gives Kazuko a better scene for the cameras, the supposed wife being kept from her dying husband by a hostile daughter. Yasunaga dies months later. Kazuko again brings publicity to the funeral, and his family takes her to court. Because Yasunaga was cognitively impaired when the documents were signed, the court invalidates the marriage. The legal defeat does not stop Kazuko from calling herself his widow. She repeatedly invokes his name in interviews and implies that Japan's greatest master passed his knowledge directly to her. For Kazuko, Yasunaga becomes a permanent endorsement. Her experience managing Chiyoko taught her how to shape stories for the press. Now she applies those skills to herself, packaging an ambitious club owner with limited training as a diviner of national importance. She makes bold predictions about major public events, and when enough of them appear correct, the successful examples eclipse the failures. Television producers invite her onto variety programs. Her aggressive style, absolute certainty, and willingness to insult guests make her a ratings machine. The television exposure sells books, and the books make her television authority appear legitimate. Eventually, her publications reach historic sales numbers and generate a fortune. By the time Minori reconstructs this history, her admiration has become dread. Her former husband works for an influential weekly magazine and reveals that its reporters are preparing a major investigation into Kazuko's past. Any one of the allegations could damage her public image. Together, they could destroy it. Minori finally understands why Kazuko commissioned the novel. The book was never meant to explore a complicated life. It was intended as a preemptive defense, replacing evidence of manipulation with a heroic story about a poor girl who defeated fate. If Minori writes the version Kazuko wants, the book will sell. Kazuko can pay her generously, improve Minori's career, and perhaps help her win awards. The money would also make life easier for Minori and her daughter. But the price is professional integrity. A flattering book could help Kazuko continue profiting from vulnerable followers. If Minori writes the truth, Kazuko will use every connection she has to punish her. Unable to decide, Minori keeps investigating. She visits the fortune teller, whom Kazuko publicly calls her first teacher. The woman denies ever training Kazuko. She merely lent her several books, which Kazuko never returned. More importantly, she believes Kazuko violated the most basic principle of divination. A fortune teller should avoid controlling another person's life. Kazuko enjoys precisely that control. She does not behave like a guide. She behaves like a dictator. Minori next finds one of Hata's former men. She expects him to confirm that Kazuko and Hata merely used each other. He refuses to simplify them. Whatever manipulation existed, he believes their love was real. Years after Chiyoko separated them, Hata returned to Kazuko with cancer. Kazuko did not demand an apology or punish him for the affair. She accepted him, cared for him, and remained beside him until he died. In their final days, they looked less like a gang leader and his former mistress than an old married couple who had somehow found their way home. The former subordinate gives Minori a warning. Kazuko was never simply a Yakuza man's woman. No label could contain her, and anyone who approached her expecting a single clean truth would be defeated by the contradictions. Kazuko has already learned about Minori's investigation. She rages at the publisher's executives, who berate Minori's editor and threaten to remove the writer from the project. The editor asks Minori to endure one final encounter so they can apologize. Kazuko does not want a private apology. She brings Minori onto a television program and conducts a public reading. Under the cover of astrology, Kazuko attacks Minori's appearance, age, career, divorce, and lack of success. She declares that Minori already lives in hell and should seize the opportunity Kazuko placed in front of her. Minori answers in the same indirect language. She says she recently met a glamorous person whose polished surface conceals something ugly. The pen belongs to Minori, and she intends to write her own novel, not the authorized lie. Kazuko keeps smiling for the cameras, but her fury is unmistakable. Minori interviews people at the television station. Executives praise Kazuko because she delivers ratings. Crew members who work with her every day tell another story. They describe relentless demands, humiliation, and fear. Once again, the official version depends on where a person stands and what Kazuko can give them. The elderly woman who purchased the costly grave marker is still being abused by her son. Nothing in her home has improved, yet she continues believing Kazuko. Admitting the reading was false would also mean admitting that she spent her savings and hope on nothing. The young woman Kazuko, frightened out of an affair, however, later built a happy family. She credits Kazuko's warning with saving her life. To that woman, the false performance produced a true rescue. Minori writes both outcomes. Kazuko's words helped some people and harmed others. Her insight was often real, but so was her appetite for money and obedience. Minori refuses to turn her into either a saint or a monster because both labels hide too much. When Kazuko reads the completed manuscript, she begins to cry. She admits that it is powerful, but it is not the book she ordered. She wanted a triumphant fantasy that would present her as a selfless heroine and protect her from the coming scandal. Minori argues that the real protagonist is more compelling. A woman clawing through poverty, desire, betrayal, and moral compromise has far more life than a spotless hero. Readers may condemn Kazuko's choices, but they cannot ignore the force that kept her moving. Kazuko cuts her off. If Minori will not rewrite the book, then every page is worthless. She promises to use her influence to prevent publication. Minori expected that answer. She will gain neither money nor status from the work, but she will not lend her name to Kazuko's manufactured innocence. As Minori leaves, she rejects the authority of Kazuko's prediction and chooses her own future. Kazuko remains alone in the enormous house, gathering the scattered manuscript pages from the floor. She calls for her little dog, but even the animal seems to have disappeared. The woman who spent a lifetime controlling rooms can no longer command a single response. Soon afterward, the magazine investigation is published. Television networks end their contracts, and Kazuko falls from the height of celebrity culture. Yet scandal does not eliminate her business. She continues private divination, reportedly earning hundreds of millions of yen a year from devoted followers. Kazuko Hosoki dies on November 8, 2021, at the age of 83. She traveled from a starving child beneath a bridge to the Queen of Ginza, then from disgraced nightclub owner to the most famous fortune teller in Japan. Her life contains countless lies, but also a brutal consistency. First, other people deceived and priced her. Then she learned to deceive, price, and control them. She could convince millions of followers to accept the destiny she described, yet she never accepted one for herself. There is little redemption in her story. What remains is the frightening vitality of a woman who treated every fall as another surface to push against, and every human weakness as a door she could open. That's all for today's drama recap. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share. I'll see you in the next one.